Hi, welcome to Speak Up for Our Planet. We're glad that you found us. All of our videos are of experts talking about what they're doing to save the planet and how you can help too. You might like to watch the videos live and ask the expert questions. In that case, just visit our website and click Join Us. Hope to see you soon. Iona McMillan has an MSc in biodiversity conservation and management from Oxford University, and she is really interested in the environment and monitoring programs for ecology purposes. So she's the perfect person to speak to us this evening. She is currently the Citizen Science Coordinator for the Chilterns Chalk Streams project, which is quite a mouthful, but it's a really important role. And I would very much like to introduce her now to speak to us about chalk streams. Thank you, Iona.
Great. Thank you so much, Jane, for that lovely introduction. Right, I'll just get the presentation up now. I assume can everyone hear all right? Perfect. Okay, 1 second. Great. So as Jane said, tonight I'm going to be talking to you about citizen science and how we use it to help conserve chalk streams. So my name is Iona and I work as Citizen Science Coordinator on Chiltern's Chalk Streams project, which is a bit of a mouthful, but yes, it means that I'm sort of managing volunteers, looking at data, the surveys we collect, and then really using that data to help inform the conservation work. So we'll start with a background about what is a chalk stream and why are these special, why are we trying to conserve them? And then I'll talk about the project that I work on. And then we'll just have a brief bit about citizen science, why we decided to start using it within the project. And then I'll work through a few different examples of different citizen science surveys that we do and kind of what's involved in collecting the data and what impact it makes, because the whole purpose is really making a difference to conservation. That's strange because there is an image there. There we go. Okay, so chalk streams are really quite a rare habitat globally. And it's something I feel like in England, obviously we've got people from across the world, but people don't always think about there being as much biodiversity in England. But chalk streams is one of the examples where we do have something that is really special, with 85% of the world's chalk streams found in England. And these are really important because they're very unique ecosystems that emerge from the particular geology that forms these streams. And they're very biodiverse, but they're also extremely under threat. So you can see on this map on the right that a lot of the streams are currently in a poor status, with very few in a good status. So there's lots of different threats. So things such as pollution, sewage, overuse of water depleting the chalk aquifers, climate change increasingly. There's lots of risks to these environments. It's a bit more about what defines a chalk stream. So the defining characteristic is the geology. So they must be fed from groundwater held in chalk aquifers. And this creates a number of special characteristics. So it's very clear, gin clear water, and it's a stable temperature. And it's also very rich in minerals. And this kind of clear, mineral-rich water means that then you've got lots of vegetation that specializes in these habitats, such as water crowfoot, watercress, and this creates great habitat diversity. You've also got a very clear gravel bed, which is really good for lots of fish species like trout, And you also have lots of birds, such as kingfishers that love chalk streams, water voles love chalk streams. So they're just really important habitats for lots of different wildlife. So the Chilterns Chalk Streams project is the project that I work for. So it's hosted by the Chilterns National Landscape, which is a protected area in the UK. So it was previously Area of Outstanding Natural Beauty, and they've just renamed it to National Landscape. So it's a bit similar to a national park. So it's a partnership program, the Chalk Streams project, and different organizations are involved within the program. So it was really set up to respond to the threats and aim to restore and conserve the 9 chalk streams that are within the Chilterns, as well as educating, engaging people with their rivers and inspiring people to make a difference. So citizen science, as Jane said a bit about, there's many different kinds of citizen science. So it's any sort of activity where public, volunteers, people who aren't necessarily working in that field, but are using their own time and knowledge to go out and collect scientific data. So that can be anything from collecting data on birds, such as in the UK, there's a big garden bird watch. It could be there's a big butterfly count. So there's lots of different schemes and ways in which you can get involved in collecting data, and it is across the entire world. But we really wanted to use citizen science within the Chalk Streams project because we wanted there to be lots of evidence for our actions. We needed to understand what are the problems with the rivers, detect those problems, and then how can we manage them? How can we restore the rivers? And is that working? So we didn't have capacity. We're quite a small team of staff. There's only like 8 of us working on the project, and we've got 9 rivers to cover. So it really gives that people power, the skills, but also so much local knowledge that people bring. And it's also a way of engaging people and empowering communities to look after their own local river. So we really could not do it without the amazing volunteers. So there's lots of different citizen science schemes. So they're sort of focusing on water quality. So there's some where we've looked at emerging contaminants, so chemicals in the river. We also have sondes in some of the rivers to monitor things such as dissolved oxygen or pH. And then we have other surveys such as amphibian and reptile surveys or trout red surveys that are focusing more on the ecology of the rivers. So really just trying to build that database. And it's a very big task force. We have trained over 300 volunteers across the Chilterns in these methods. So one of the first ones I'm going to talk about is the Riverfly Monitoring Initiative. So this is a very long-running national citizen science scheme. So Riverfly Partnership was set up in 2004. So it's set up initially by the angling community, so fishers, but then it's really expanded. It's lots of environment agencies, rivers groups, charities, communities, just trying to protect their river. So Riverfly monitoring involves getting out. So you can see on the right-hand side, there's a picture of someone actually in the River Misbourne. That's Mike, our river coordinator there. So you do a kick sample. So you've got your net, you get into the river and you kick and disturb the sediment, and that dislodges invertebrates into the net. And then you take it back to your tray, as you can see in the photo on the left, and then you're identifying what have you found. And this is really important, not just to see what invertebrates are living there, but because these are ecological indicator species. So there are different sensitivities to pollution. So looking at the community there, we can see whether the river is in a good condition and what issues there might be. And there's also a thing called a trigger score, which is assigned. So if it goes below a trigger score, you can see there's been a serious pollution incident, and then it gets reported to the local, well, national agency, so Environment Agency in England and other agencies in the other British countries. So this is, a really great way to get involved in local rivers across the country. So what are you looking for? So these are some of the invertebrates that are included within the monitoring initiative. So they're really like beautiful, wacky things. So these are very, very small creatures, but when you look at them up close, they're actually very beautiful. And we have got a video. So this is a caddisfly, cased caddis that I found out on the Misbourne. And you can see they make these cases out of lots of different things. So some of them have used leaves, and some of them have used tiny bits of gravel. So it's a bit like how a hermit crab takes an old shell to protect itself. These are like they've got soft bodies inside, and they use this to help protect themselves. But it's quite amazing the different structures that they can build. So it's really fascinating getting to find all of these creatures. So we can also use this to track restoration schemes. So this is an example of a project we did on the River Chess, so down at Cheshire Moor. So we turned what was previously a straight concrete channel. So you can see in the top photo, it's very poor habitat. There wasn't really any vegetation on the bank. The river was very silty. There wasn't much living there. But then once we've re-meandered it, we put in vegetation, removed tons and tons of concrete, created a lot more of a natural channel. And the riverfly score showed significant improvements even just 1 year after the project. And extended riverfly provides sort of an extra level of information. So you can see the water quality score improved and the silt and flow score improved. So it's less silty, better quality water. So it really shows that you should see these differences. So another one, which is a very popular survey, is the water vole monitoring. So water voles, they're so cute and beautiful, but they're very threatened within the UK. So there's been a 95% drop in numbers in the last century. So this is due to multiple factors, so habitat loss, pollution, predation by invasive mink. So that's an American species that's been released from mink fur farms and is a serious problem for water voles. So chalk streams naturally should be great water vole habitat. So we have been involved in a water vole recovery scheme on the Chess. So surveying for water voles, it's a bit less glamorous than you think it might be because the voles are very shy creatures. So you don't actually see the voles themselves that often. So you're sort of searching through the river and the vegetation looking for signs of voles. So you're looking for little bits of feeding signs. They chew at a very distinct angle, and you can see that they've cut through the bits of reed. They can create these lawns such as pictured, and there's also a latrine pictured. So you end up getting very excited about finding water vole poo. That is a great time. And it showed some really positive improvements from the project, which has involved trapping invasive mink and restoring habitat. You can see, so in this, the red is where water voles are found. So you can see in the top picture, so 2003, there was a very limited range of water voles on the Chess. But now, by last year, you can see water voles are found across most of the river, and the numbers have also greatly increased. So we've now got a stable population, which is really, really good to see. So another technique that you could get involved in is the modular river physical survey. There's a lot of these that have quite mouthful names. So this is a bankside survey. It's conducted in pairs or groups. So you'll go out across the survey season, sort of spring and autumn visits normally to each of the sites, and you're recording the habitat diversity and quality. So I also included a picture of one of the survey sheets, so you can sort of see the process that's involved. So you're looking at things such as what's the bank face like, how steep are the banks, what's the vegetation like, is there diversity in terms of the channel bed, is there vegetation in the channel, what's the gravel structure like. So you're kind of looking at a whole picture of the river and getting an idea of what condition is it in. This is a really useful one for restoration projects. For instance, you can see some data here. I'm not going to dive into all of it because of time, but this was from a restoration we did at Restore Hope on the River Chess. So again, we put in some berms. So berm is sort of a flat sort of structure like on the edge of the river, but we made these artificial ones out of wood, so sort of woody debris. You create a sort of meander and it increases the flow, and that improves the sort of amount of gravel on the bottom of the riverbed and creates that habitat diversity. And then in the results from Morph, you can then see these improvements in quite a few of the factors, such as habitat complexity in the riparian zone and the riparian vegetation complexity. So riparian means sort of along the riverside, like on the riverbank. So yeah, you can track these changes. And we keep expanding because we're doing lots of ambitious restoration projects across the Chilterns. And one of them that we've just set up a new Morph team for is at Hewendon. So we've got a big project plan to hopefully remove some weirs, improve the channel, narrow it again, and return it to more of a natural chalk stream. So we do provide full training for all of the surveys that I've mentioned. So with Riverfly as well, with watervole training, everyone is fully trained, and we do that normally for free or low cost. And you can see, so on the right-hand side is the last Morph training day that we ran. So we got lots of people out, sort of taught them the technique. There was indoor training and an outdoor element of the training. And then we had the new volunteers who were up and ready to go. And you can see the picture. We were out actually in November until it got almost dark doing all of the Morph surveys. So yeah, it's really great when you sort of get new people coming in, and then once they're trained, you can sort of feel that sort of excitement to sort of get out and keep monitoring the sites and sort of track these changes. So another technique that we do is flow monitoring. So this one is important because it addresses some of the threats that face chalk streams, which can be changing flows and particularly low flows due to abstraction. So that's the use of water. So people taking water out of the aquifers or out of the chalk streams themselves, and that reduces the flow. And also climate change increasingly making flows unpredictable. So the data that our teams collect does go to the Environment Agency, so to the government, and it's also going to research programs. For instance, on the Chess, we're now sending our data to the Floods and Droughts Research Infrastructure Programme, which is a multi-million-pound research project. So we're really trying to make sure the data is used. And we do also use it in the design and monitoring of restoration work. So yeah, that's a great one. Again, sort of going out monthly in pairs or groups and measuring the same transect of river each time. So we've got this fancy Sontec flow kit, and you sort of put out your tape measure, and then you're taking lots of different measurements along that cross section of the river. And again, we provide the full training for this. Okay, so this is the last of the techniques I'm going to talk about today. Hopefully okay on time. So this one is called the Nutrient Ongoing Scrutiny Evaluation Survey, but it was actually named by one of our citizen scientists volunteers, and the acronym is NOSES, which is quite a fun acronym. So NOSES is about measuring nutrients in rivers, particularly phosphates and also nitrates. So these nutrients can be increased by human activity, whether that's sewage or it might be agricultural runoff or domestic waste. There's lots of ways we're putting nutrients into rivers. And if there's too many nutrients in the river, it causes a problem called eutrophication. So basically, lots of nutrients cause algae to grow. And once that algae's grown, it will then decompose, absorbs lots of oxygen, and then you end up with a river with not much oxygen in. If there isn't oxygen, then you'll lead to fish will die, invertebrates will die. It just won't be a healthy ecosystem. So we don't want too many nutrients going into the river. So when we run Noses Days, it's a free public event. So we get lots of people coming, and you can see on the right some of our volunteers from the last one. And you sort of go out and we give them maps. It's a bit like orienteering of the like sample points, and they go and find the sample points, get the water samples, and then they bring them back to our open air laboratory, which we set up. You can see on the left, that's me doing some of the testing. We have photometers that you use to test for the chemicals, so testing for the nitrates and phosphates, and recording all of that data. So yeah, they are actually really nice days. So we use this data in lots of different ways, but one example is that we're investigating a phosphorus stripping. So the phosphorus stripping is a process that's put in place by sewage treatment work. So it's a way of removing phosphorus from sewage. And on the chest, there's a big problem with phosphates. It was rated poor for phosphates. One of the main culprits was the sewage treatment works in Chesham. And thankfully, partly due to the negotiations by the project, Thames Water did install phosphorus stripping to try and alleviate this problem. And our data actually found that it was making a big improvement since that process of removing phosphorus was put in place. So on the left, you can see we had some data from 2023, and we repeated the same sampling sites in 2025. And we did find it was statistically significantly lower in the 2025 than the 2023, and the difference being the phosphorus stripping in between. And we also did a spatial comparison between the river, which had the sewage treatment works outfall going into it, and this neighbouring river called the Little Chess, which was sort of a clean comparison because there was no sewage effluent, as in water from the sewage treatment works. There wasn't any input into that river. And we did find there wasn't any statistically significant difference between the river with that sewage treatment works going into it and the river without in terms of phosphate after the phosphorus stripping. So that suggests that that was an improvement. So yeah, this kind of data is useful both for lobbying for these changes and then also tracking have the changes worked. and there is more information on our website. Okay, so thank you so much for listening tonight and for inviting me on to speak up for our planet. So I have put in the link to our website, so that's chilternstreams.org, and that has lots of information about the citizen science, and it links to our work on the chess, and it also has information about our wider restoration projects, events that we run, the education work. So there's lots of useful information there. And if you have any questions afterwards, or if you are local, obviously it might be hard if you're in Australia, but you can also email if you want to get involved. So thank you so much. And yeah, happy to take any questions. I'll just close that tab now.
Great. Thank you so much, Iona. I actually think you did a very good job there of making it clear just how much people can get involved and how really, really valuable their involvement is. And I hope that everyone here can kind of imagine that in their local area there might be such things, whether it's butterflies or glowworms or whether it's the river, that there will be projects that they can get involved with. So I think you did a great job of just being excited about citizen science and how many things it can do. So we do already have some questions in the chat. I'd like to introduce you to Rosie, who's going to help me with putting the questions together. I can't see her at the moment. Can you wave your arms, Rosie?
I'm here, but my Wi-Fi is a little on and off, so
okay,
it should be fine.
Fine. Okay, just so everybody knows who you are, the other person here from Speak Up for Our Planet. So, some questions. The chat is buzzing. I'm going to ignore Rosie's question just for a minute and ask some other people's questions. So Lena says, are you partnered with organizations in other countries and outside Europe? And Frank has a similar question. Are you collaborating with similar groups monitoring other chalk streams in England? So that they are different questions, but they're both about partnering and working with other organizations.
Yeah, so we do work very closely with similar groups and other chalk streams in England. So we're part of a couple of wider partnerships. So there's one based on the River Colne and that whole catchment. And there's also one based in the sort of South Chilterns, and there's various different organisations that look after very similar chalk streams, and we collaborate closely. We also feed into national guidance on chalk streams management and go to various different chalk streams flagship project partnership meetings and go along to things such as River Restoration Conference. We also go to things such as Casco, which is a big citizen science scheme. So lots of, working within the country. In terms of the sort of European or other countries outside of Europe as well, there has been less of that so far. It's mostly been kind of on a national level, obviously partly because most of the chalk streams are in England, so we're sort of naturally managing quite a similar ecosystem. So there's more opportunities to kind of learn from within. But it would be really exciting to partner with more organizations from across the world. And I would love to be in touch with some rivers groups in other countries. So yeah, if anyone does have any contacts, that would be really good.
Thank you. Rosie, do you want to take a question?
Yeah. Do you have any projects on the Rye in the Wickham area? And we'll just start with that one.
We have projects on, is that the Wye? The River Wye runs through Wickham.
The Rye.
Yeah, I think we've got a mistake.
Okay. Yeah, the Riverfly is on the Wye. There's lots of Riverfly schemes on the Wye, different sites. And we do have some, as I mentioned, so the Hughenden stream is a tributary of the Wye, where we've been putting in the extra morph sites that I mentioned. So that's one of the Wye tributaries. But yeah, on the Wye itself, there's a lot of work done by other organizations like Friends of the Wye, who are very involved there. So again, it's lots of working in partnership with lots of different organizations. So yeah, they do some great work on the Wye.
And then there's a question about flooding. In fact, two questions about flooding, which is somehow feels rather relevant at the moment because we've had so much water recently. What's the impact of increased flooding risk on these sorts of initiatives you're talking about? And it actually does the work you do help to protect us against flooding?
Yeah, it definitely depends on the project. So when carrying out in terms of restoration projects, to get a restoration project passed, it has to go through several stages. So we'll be talking with the Environment Agency, the councils, and part of that is doing flood modelling. So you have to prove that what you're doing is not going to increase the flood risk. And obviously, if it can reduce the flood risk, then that's a benefit. So quite a few bits of the work we're doing, sort of getting those more natural channels. It can sometimes it will be creating a wetland. For instance, in the Hamble, we did create this large wetland, but that's sort of a natural flood management way, because you can sort of create a natural sort of marshy floodplain in an area where it can do its natural behavior in a field, and then that can sort of reduce flood risk further downstream because you're sort of letting it naturally flood in areas where it can. So it's kind of all that thing of balance. But yes, when designing the schemes, for instance, there's one on the Chess at the moment, and part of the goal of that is to sort of rebalance the sort of flow in each of the channels and sort of reduce flood risk by sort of making more space under a bridge and sort of. So yeah, it is something that we do build into our projects, is looking at flood risk and trying to reduce that for communities, because it's a big concern. It can also be a concern for the river as well, because if there's lots of sort of flashy floods, like for instance on a road, it can wash off lots of pollutants from the road into the river. So then trying to deal with those kind of floods nearby on roads and sort of improving drainage and reducing that risk is a benefit to the river as well as the local community.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, there's a couple more questions on impacts of the work. So going back up a bit, Jane asked, what happens if the riverfly results are below the required level? So in other words, you've got the results, then what happens?
Yeah, so when the riverfly score, so if it goes below the trigger score, so a trigger score is assigned by the Environment Agency. So normally you need about 12 months or 6 to 12 months of data at a site before you'll get a trigger score assigned. And they're basically saying, given the results you find, if it dropped below this level, that would mean there'd been a pollution incident. So if that happens, then the Environment Agency get notified and they come out and check on the site to try and detect what is the problem and take any actions depending on what it is. If it's an extreme incident, there's also an incident hotline that you can call. If you sort of see visible pollution or if you see dead fish, you can sort of call a quicker hotline. But the idea is then that action will be taken by the governing authority to sort of find out what has happened. So they'll do another sample themselves and see, are they also getting that low score? Is it an anomaly or is it a problem? And then if there has been an incident, then they'll sort of take action against whoever's caused that incident.
I think that answers my question, which was about, can you give us an example of a time when the monitoring's picked up a rapid change in the river and been able to pinpoint a pollution source?
Yeah. I'd say riverflight is one of the really good ways to pick up those pollution incidents, but then also things like the NOSES survey, so the nutrient survey, has in the past sort of found some areas with surprisingly high phosphates. Then you sort of go in and investigate them, or it's sort of a way of building the data to show that there currently was a big phosphates issue with the chess, and sort of campaigning for those reductions that have been put in place due to the phosphorus stripping. So sort of finding those problems. So it's both sort of those snap problems, but also long-term problems you can pick up.
Okay.
So I'm interested to know something. This is a very specific question about something that happened recently. There was a pollution scare on the river, and there was a requirement for us, the people who do the river fly monitoring, to do a separate exercise. We had to scrape stones with toothbrushes.
Oh yeah.
Just over a very short period. And I did my scraping of stones with toothbrushes very diligently, but I didn't really quite understand what it was all about. So maybe you can fill me in.
Yeah, so that survey, so that's part of the biofilm survey. So this was actually a collaboration. So we work with a lot of different universities and research organizations, and this was a study being run at Cranfield University. So it was a PhD project by Erin Doyle. But she was looking at, so biofilms, it's like microorganism communities that live on the rocks in rivers. So that's why you're scraping them off with the toothbrushes, to try and get as algae and bacteria and lots of different microorganisms. And the reason you want to monitor them is because these communities can also respond to pollution incidents. And this is quite innovative research that she was doing. So sort of trying to, there's been some research done so far, but we still need a lot more information on these biofilm communities. But the idea is that they can also be used to look at the quality of rivers, a bit similar to the river fly, but using a different community of organisms.
Okay, thank you very much. That helps. It was quite amusing. I collected my samples. I was sitting in my car scraping away when a large herd of cows came and wandered into the river where I'd been working, and I thought, I'm glad they weren't there before I collected my samples.
But yeah, that will be an exciting one. Actually, we do have a Citizen Science evening in May, but it's in person in the chest, so only for the more local audience. But Erin will be coming back and delivering the results from that biofilm survey.
Okay, so another very general question: what sort of time commitments? What's the range of time commitments? I think is probably a better question. That you would need people to be willing to give in order to be valuable citizen scientists?
Yeah, well, it can be really anything from sort of a one-off event. For instance, like some of our volunteers who came along to the nutrient sampling days, literally they can just come for a day, you just book on, it's a one-off as a nice thing to do on a Saturday. And then other people get involved maybe once a month, for instance, like yourself, if you do Riverfly once a month. And then you do find that some people then will pick up like more and more surveys. Like we have some people who do like flow monitoring, and they'll go out like twice a month doing flow, and then they also do Riverfly, and then they're also picking up like the trout red surveys that we've been doing, looking at like breeding trout. And then suddenly you sort of got a whole like suite of different activities that you're involved in, and you're going out like once or twice a week. So it's kind of up to the person. There's sort of, lots of different levels, and we try to make it so it's flexible in terms of time, and also have things that can be done on like weekends or evenings in your own time, so that people who are working or retired sort of have, there's different options of levels of involvement. And we've also got people who get very involved in terms of, they'll also be doing some of looking at the data and sort of collating that, and sort of creating charts and tables and using it for their own sort of research. and getting involved in steering groups and kind of helping shape the project. So there's all these different levels of involvement, honestly. But yeah, anything is really great.
Okay, so what I take out of that is that you have some people who are just sort of dipping in and out, and other people who are real citizen science junkies.
Yeah,
get to love it and spend a lot of their time doing it. That's good to hear.
Yeah, that's really the nice thing about it, is that obviously it's really useful for us, but people do find it really fun and like start to get that bug, and do just want to do more of it, which is really nice because it's a great way to get out and meet people. And we do host like citizen science events where we sort of share the research. There's a newsletter, and sort of building that kind of group and community up is really important.
Okay, we have a new question from Claudia. Do you find any microplastic? This is a big problem for streams and oceans. Does this problem exist there, meaning here in the Chilterns as well? Biofilms on microplastics are a topic as well. So yeah, microplastics.
Yeah, so that's something that we haven't actually investigated, but we would like to, because I feel like microplastics, I mean, we kind of know that they are everywhere, but within our project, we haven't done any citizen science to detect the microplastics. So it's something that's definitely on the agenda. I'm sure it is a problem, but yeah, that's definitely something that would be good to investigate more.
So are there other things that you feel you would do if you had even more volunteers?
Yeah, I feel like there's so much that you could do. I'm hoping it'd be nice to just sort of measure sort of more aspects of the ecology as well. I'd like to sort of do more surveys of the dragonflies, for instance. I am planning a bio blitz in the summer, so that will be sort of looking at a lot of different biodiversity and sort of trying to capture more that we aren't at the moment. But yeah, there's sort of so much that you can do, which is exciting.
So there's no end to the number of volunteers you could use.
Yes.
So, okay, here's a different kind of question. Why are there so many chalk streams in England?
Yeah, so that's to do with the geology, because obviously chalk streams are coming from that chalk geology. So we have some big like bands of chalk in England, and they sort of host these like aquifers, because chalk's quite a porous rock, so it will store water underground. And then we've got lots of natural springs where the water's coming up from the chalk. So yeah, it's sort of all to do with that combination of the geology and the climate and the topography, the shape of the land. So yeah, the reason they're here is because of the rocks.
Okay, yeah, you get chalk streams where you get chalk, but it's interesting that it seems to be particularly that a huge proportion of them are in England. So it's obviously just a combination of factors, presumably that make it happen. Do you get schools involved in these types of projects?
Yes, yeah, we do. We've actually just set up a Riverfly group on a school in Berkhamsted. But so schools, so there's another one of my colleagues, she works focusing just on education engagement. So she gets lots of schools involved. They sort of raise like trout in the classroom, does lots of like river dipping with them. So looking at all the invertebrates in the rivers. And I also get involved in it. And so, yeah, we do have quite a lot of local schools that we do get out on their river. We sort of go in and teach them about chalk streams and sort of try and get them really engaged and inspired. We've also had a project where we're building like a water garden in a school and talking about reducing water use as well. And if you go onto our website, thechilternstreams.org, you'll see some of the work that we've done with schools. And we've had schools produce videos for us, produce like leaflets about chalk streams. So we're really trying to like, engage this next generation and inspire them.
Great, thank you. Claudia, Emily is from England. So there's a link here, Claudia. Do you just want to unmute for a second and explain that?
Yes. I know Emily Stevenson is a specialist on microplastics, and I had an interview with her some years ago when we did interviews for Ant Plastic Zoo, and she will talk to the new Rotary Club Earth Network in April. So if anybody's interested in microplastics, just let me know and I can send you the link.
It's funny, she
Yeah,
was
that
one of
sounds
the
really
very,
good.
very first speakers on Speak Up for Our Planet. I think she was about,
Oh, that's great.
I think she was about the second or third speaker we had.
Oh, you see,
She
we
was
know
very,
the
very
same
good.
person.
She was very, very good. Yeah.
Yes,
So
she
there's
is.
a link there in the chat if anybody would like
Yes,
to
yes.
pick that up.
Yeah, this is about her, but I can send you the link for the talk whenever you want to know.
Okay.
Mm.
So Lena asks, are some of the projects associated with universities and their research projects? You already said that the one with the scrubbing of the stones was associated with a university. Do you have other ones like that?
Yes, yeah, we try and work very closely with universities and research partners because it's a really good positive for us to sort of bring in that expertise and the extra equipment and skills that they have, and also for them to get to work on sort of a real life project. So one of the close partnerships we have is with Queen Mary University London. So they operate our sondes, so sort of continuous monitoring equipment that we have in the River Chess. So I go out each month for a couple of days a month with the staff from QMUL, and we sort of maintain all the equipment. We also collect water samples, so nutrient samples, and they often bring out students with them. So at the moment, there's 4 different BSc students from the geography department who are doing projects based on the data in the chess. So they're looking at various things from the nutrients in the water to looking at the sediments, done some like core samples. So that's a really strong relationship that we have there. And we also, yeah, there's a couple of big projects also in the chess. There's been quite a lot of focus of research there at the moment, but we also try and expand it wider. But there's, yeah, floods and droughts research infrastructure, which I mentioned. That's a big national project, sort of trying to improve modelling of floods and droughts with a look at climate change. But they have been using our flow data, and they're sort of creating a portal for all of our data to go on. So that's an example where citizen science data is contributing to it, but they're also putting in lots of their own like equipment and monitoring. So it's trying to have that sort of interface between the data citizen scientists collect and other research organizations, like for instance, the Centre for Ecology and Hydrology are involved. So there's lots of big organizations that we work very closely with. There's also one called Smart Water, that's like Imperial College are quite closely involved in that, and they've put out some new like equipment in the river as well to help with the monitoring. So yeah, there's lots of different collaborations.
I've just seen that there's one more question that's appeared. Can you say more about the link between river health and human health, apart from flooding, which is obviously, which you've already mentioned and which is high up the list? So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different ways to think about it. I think one of the things that I feel very strongly about is that connection with nature. And there's been so much research that shows that blue space and sort of having that connection with water is really important for our mental well-being, and sort of the benefits of relaxing like by the river, the walks that people take by the river. It's got that physical and mental health benefit from sort of that proximity, and seeing a river in a good condition as well creates that benefit. Obviously, you would also have health risks if the river was highly contaminated and people were getting in there and then being exposed to, like, for instance, if there's lots of sewage pollution incidents, that is a health risk as well. So it's kind of, yeah, there's multiple different benefits. But I think there is so much that can be said for sort of getting out by a river, whether you're walking, whether you're doing river fly, if you're just sitting there sort of watching the stream. And it's like a healthy chalk stream. It's something that's really, really beautiful. And also it's that sensory experience. You see the nature, you hear the sound of it like bubbling away. I feel like it is very important for well-being, and we do try and promote that a lot with lots of different walks along the rivers, for instance. So yeah, I think there's quite a strong link there.
Well, Iona, thank you so much. I have to say, we Speak Up for Our Planet by saying that we invite experts to speak on subjects to do with the environment. Experts, absolutely no kidding. I was really impressed with the way you answered questions. You seem to know absolutely all about everything that was asked. So as long as nobody feels that I have ignored a question which they asked, please shout quickly if I did. I would like to thank you very much indeed for your talk and give you a lovely round of applause. Thank you very much indeed. It was really terrific.